a gale for the last fortnight, so we're taking the first opportunity to do some outside filming whilst the wind's not blowing, and so we can get reasonable sound. We've just been cutting some firewood logs there, and first of all I'd like to just talk about the difference between using a circular saw and using a chainsaw. Well, a circular saw with a tractor obviously is using diesel, and in Britain you can use red diesel, which is a lot cheaper. The diesel engine's very efficient, and so therefore you can cut a lot of timber for a relatively small amount of fuel, as opposed to a chainsaw, which of course, as we know, uses petrol and an oil mix. It also uses chain oil, and there are a lot of consumables on a chainsaw, notably the sprocket in here, the bar, the chain. Using a chainsaw for processing firewood is quite an inefficient way of doing things compared to a circular saw. The circular saw blade also will last you for ages if you sharpen it right, maintain it right, and that's what we're going to cover later on in this video. Okay, so maintenance of a circular saw, beyond any gearboxes and bearings that may want greasing, and of course maintenance of the tractor. But if you've got a tractor already and you use it for things around the property, that's a separate issue. The main maintenance is sharpening the blade. First of all, you've got to take the blade off. With this particular one, we lock the shaft, not with that. We lock the shaft by putting a piece of wood against the guide and against the tooth. Now then, which way does the nut undo? The nut undoes the same way that the blade rotates when it's cutting. So luckily on this way, on this one, it's anti-clockwise. They undo that way specifically so that when you're using the saw, the nut tightens up rather than undoing. If it was undoing this way and the blade was spinning that way all the time, there's a good chance the nut over time would come loose. So we just undo the nut. Got to be careful not to abuse these threads or abuse the nut. This saw had laid under a hedge for several decades, but because it's a Ferguson saw and because I soaked this nut in diesel for a fortnight to a month, when we came to try and undo it, it wasn't that much grief. So ideally should be wearing gloves because the blade's sharp, and just ease the blade off. So here we are in the workshop. This is the blade that we've just taken off the saw. When we got this, it stood underneath a hedge for a couple of decades, and so it was in the right state. But we gave it a fair middling amount of serious saw doctoring, and it's cutting quite nicely now. What I'd like to do before we start showing you how to sharpen is talk about the profiles of the teeth. As you see, the front of this tooth is vertical relative to the centre hole, and the back is leaning back. Now when we sharpen these teeth, we use the file. When we sharpen them, the file's on an angle like that, and it's on an angle like that. This gives the proper profile for cross-cutting, and it means that when the saw enters the wood, it doesn't grab hold like that. It has a gentle bite to it. Yeah. The steeper you bring the front angle here, the front of the tooth, the more you bring it over like that, yes, and the less of a bevel you get on those, the more the tooth wants to grab, and the more it would be a tooth suitable for ripping. I'm just going to show you a tooth off a rip saw. Here's a circular saw, and as you can see, the tooth's leaning forward like mad, and it's been filed dead flat across. So this is a true rip saw, And if you were trying to cross-cut timber with this, it would grab hold of the timber and try and spin it. Before we start sharpening, I'd just like to talk to you about files for a minute. Number one, always have a handle on the file. And it can be anything, a block of wood, a piece of ash branch, doesn't matter. Just avoiding that tang shooting back through and stabbing you in the wrist. Second thing is, for this sort of purpose, the files need to be fairly fine, so there's a nice cut to them. Third thing is, the quickest way to blunt a file, and I'm not going to do it at that one, I'll do it at this one that's already blunt, is to, and then pull it backwards. That will blunt a file quicker than anything. So, whenever you're sharpening, always file and take the file off. File, like that. Okay? So, first thing to do, get your best glasses. Otherwise, you really won't be able to see what you're doing. The next thing is a saw, a tempered steel saw like this. The teeth are set, so therefore that tooth sticks that way, the next one sticks that way, the next one that way, the next one that way. The reason for that is so that the cut is wider than the width of the blade. If that wasn't the case, it would create a lot of friction and everything would heat up and you'd be wasting a lot of power. This way the blade runs through the timber very smoothly. So what you do, and it's the easiest way, is to always sharpen the teeth that are set to the back. That way it's, and I'll show you why. You sharpen this one which is facing that way at an angle, because this is a multi-purpose cut, yes, and so therefore then that's all bright steel there. If I tried to sharpen this one, which is facing this way, just listen what happens. Nasty. So always sharpen it. So sharpen the top until you can see bright steel, and then sharpen the front, again at an angle, just to attain bright steel all the way down there, and a razor edge along the front. So now once we've cut the front, we don't want a right angle down the bottom here. So we'll take this out with a 5.5mm chainsaw file. And then I've just taken the rest of the gullet out, because as you sharpen the top of the teeth get shorter over time, and so you need the gullets to go down at the same time, and you're better off doing a little bit at a time.